A big focus on growth that's coming in the second half, growth that is kind of evidenced now. But this is the first time you and I have been able to speak since you've been CEO. So what have you done to change that growth trajectory?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I would say, we're just like running the company with a lot more discipline, a lot more operating rigor. And as it relates to growth in particular, I think we've been very focused on some of the innovation bets that we've been making. And I think perhaps most encouragingly, we're starting to see some real signs that this combination of communications, which we're the leader in, contextual data, which we're also the leader in, plus AI, that combination to drive really personalized experiences for consumers vis-a-vis the customers we support is starting to get some traction.
There's been a lot of emphasis as well on sort of reorganization. What does the company Twilio look like now under the changes you've made, Khozema?
Look, I think the company organization is in pretty good shape, actually. Like about a year or so ago, we took steps to, kind of get our cost base in shape. But on the flip side, we also wanted to be really focused in the areas in which we wanted to grow. And so we have a communications business that we established at that time as kind of a proper business unit. We did the same thing with our segment business, establishing that with a proper business unit. They've got kind of an aligned set of metrics. And I think the benefit of that is that it also allows for a certain level of disclosure that investors were also asking for.
Khozema, it is important to note that where we are today is in part the result of activist investor interest in the company. You seem to have responded to that positively, taken action. Would you just update the audience that's familiar with Twilio where we stand, please?
Yeah, I just think fundamentally, like, we're trying to run the company well, right? I mean, I think that's something that every single one of our share owners want. It starts with financial discipline, being smart about the bets that we're making, obviously reaccelerating top line growth over time. We see positive signs about our ability to do that. We're more optimistic about that. I think operating rigor, just kind of the internal mechanics of the company, like doing that well, delivering on the things that we said we would do and actually, going and doing those things. And then I think when it comes to innovation, just being really focused, so we're taking a handful of bets. As I mentioned, one of those is really around this notion of contextual data, using that as a means to combine it with communications to drive interactions on the other side. Like, we serve customers ultimately, and customers keep telling us that's what they want. And I think that's ultimately what's going to yield the success of the company, as well as for our share owners.
Well, contextual data, but when we talk about AI in Twilio, a lot of it plays on what you're good at, right? Voice intelligence, verify those products. Have you seen an AI-driven acceleration, or are you just saying, we've been doing this a while, guys?
I think it's kind of early days, to be honest with you. But, the nature of it is sort of in the product vernacular that you just referred to, right? So voice intelligence, right? I mean, it's a little bit different than from where we were, let's say, a few years ago. Like, actually what's taking place inside these calls now is the ability to harvest some of the data, always with consumer consent, I might add, but harvest the data inside those interactions to pick up keywords, feed that back into an AI engine such that that information can be used to both make that particular conversation more interesting, more engaging for one of the consumers that our customers are engaging with, as well as at the same time taking that data and feeding it back in so that over time that results in a more delightful customer engagement.